Ever get that weird feeling that the same people own everything, from your morning coffee to your hospital bill? Well, you're not wrong. There's a shadowy group of financial wizards called private equity firms, and they've been quietly buying up America like it's on clearance at Walmart. Mattress companies bought, fast food chains snagged, veterinary clinics. Yep, even the place that does your colonoscopy might be owned by Wall Street bros. This isn't some conspiracy theory, it's capitalism, just with more spreadsheets and less sunlight. Back in 2000, private equity firms owned just 4% of US businesses. Now, try over 20%. That's 1 in every 5 companies, controlled by firms you've probably never heard of, like Blackstone, KKR, or Apollo. Sounds like a Greek tragedy, but it's your real-life economy. And here's the plot twist. You probably helped fund it. Pension funds, university endowments, even your 401k might be feeding this beast. So when people ask, does private equity own everything? The honest answer is not everything, just the stuff you care about. In this video, we're pulling back the velvet curtain. We'll break down how private equity works, where it's expanding, and what that means for your job, your rent, and that weird $49 service fee on your doctor's bill. By the end, you'll understand why this mysterious world is growing so fast and whether we should be impressed or very, very concerned. All right, so what is private equity really? Imagine if Gordon Ramsay bought your favorite neighborhood diner, not to cook, but to flip it for profit. He changes the menu, cuts costs, maybe fires your favorite waitress, then sells the place 5 years later for double the price. That's private equity in a nutshell. Just replace diners with billion-dollar companies. Here's how it works. Private equity firms raise money from limited partners. Think pension funds, university endowments, even your retirement account. These limited partners hand over cash to general partners, the PE firms, who go out and buy companies. Their goal? Squeeze more profit out of those businesses and sell them at a higher value down the road. But they don't just use investor money, they borrow a lot. This is called a leveraged buyout, or LBO. PE firms might put up 20% of the cash and borrow the remaining 80%. The kicker? The company they just bought is now responsible for paying off that debt. That's like buying a house, then handing the mortgage to the house. Once they've taken control, PE firms do what they do best: cut costs, optimize operations, and improve margins. Sometimes it works brilliantly. Other times, well, think Toys R Us. The entire playbook is built around one goal: maximize returns. Not long-term stability, not public service, just profit. That's why the average PE deal aims for a full turnaround in 4 to 7 years. Fast, focused, ruthless. And that's just the start, because once they've mastered this model, they scale it across industries: retail, healthcare, media, even housing. Next up, let's look at where they're investing. If private equity were a house guest, it wouldn't just crash on your couch. It'd quietly buy the whole neighborhood, hike the rent, and replace your coffee machine with a coin-operated version. Over the last 2 decades, private equity firms have spread into nearly every corner of the economy, and they've done it without most people even noticing. One of the biggest targets? Healthcare. These firms have invested over $1 trillion into hospitals, nursing homes, urgent care chains, and even emergency room staffing companies. So if you've ever walked into an ER and walked out with a bill that looks like a down payment on a Tesla, chances are you've felt the PE touch. The business model is simple: buy a healthcare provider, cut inefficiencies, and boost profits. But those cuts often mean fewer nurses, shorter appointments, and higher surprise bills. In fact, a Harvard study found that patients in private equity-owned nursing homes were more likely to die, because cost cutting often comes at the expense of care. But it's not just your health, it's your shopping cart too. Remember Toys R Us or Payless? They weren't just taken down by Amazon, they were bought by private equity, loaded with debt, and squeezed dry. When the cash ran out, the companies collapsed, leaving thousands of workers jobless while the firms walked away with management fees. And then there's housing. Blackstone alone owns tens of thousands of single-family homes, making them one of the largest landlords in America. When Wall Street is your landlord, rent becomes a product, not a place to live. Evictions rise, maintenance drops, and good luck negotiating a lease with a call center. Even the news you read isn't safe. PE firms now control hundreds of local newspapers, cutting newsroom staff while increasing ad space. It's like trying to stay informed while someone slowly turns down the volume. And they're moving into tech, food chains, and even veterinary clinics, because apparently even your dog's checkup is fair game. What's wild is how invisible it all feels. These firms don't slap their names on storefronts. You'll never eat at Apollo Burgers or rent from the Carlisle Apartments. But behind the scenes, they're quietly shaping the choices we have, the prices we pay, and the quality we get, one acquisition at a time. So no, they don't own everything, but give them a few more years. So what actually happens when private equity takes over a company? Let's just say it's rarely business as usual. The moment a deal closes, the countdown begins. PE firms don't think in decades, they think in exits. Usually in 4 to 7 years, they want out, with a return big enough to make their investors smile and their next fundraising round even easier. That urgency drives everything. The first move is often cost cutting. Layoffs, slashed benefits, merging departments. It's not personal, it's math. Every dollar saved boosts the company's EBITDA. That's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. And that makes the company look shinier on paper when it's time to sell. Sometimes it works. A bloated company gets leaner and stronger, but other times you get chaos. Employees get blindsided, customers notice declining service, and innovation stalls because the goal isn't growth, it's efficiency. Then there's the debt. Remember, most PE deals use massive loans, and the company being bought is the one that has to repay it. That's like buying a car, then asking the car to pay the loan off. If revenue doesn't grow fast enough, that debt becomes a ticking time bomb. And when it explodes, bankruptcy, closures, and job losses usually follow. Even outside the balance sheet, the effects ripple. In healthcare, we've seen doctors pressured to prioritize volume over quality. In housing, we see rents rise faster than wages. In journalism, critical local reporting disappears while clickbait headlines take its place. The common thread, the people using the product or service often get less while the investors get more. And this isn't just about business strategy, it's about power. PE firms operate in the shadows. They don't answer to voters. Their names don't show up in your neighborhood, but they can decide who gets a hospital in town, how much your medicine costs, or whether your job still exists tomorrow. Now, to be fair, some argue private equity keeps struggling businesses alive, that without this capital, many would go under anyway. And yes, PE has backed startups, scaled companies, and created real value in certain industries. But when the priority is short-term profit over long-term health of a company, a community, or a country, you start to wonder, are we optimizing for success or extracting until it breaks? That's the real question behind all of this. Not just what they own, but what we're left with when they're done. So, does private equity own everything? Not quite, but it sure feels like they're buying the future, one industry at a time. They're in your hospital, they're in your housing, they're in your breakfast sandwich and your dog's dental plan. And they're doing it quietly. No signs, no logos, just control. That doesn't make private equity the villain of the story, but it does make them one of the most powerful and least understood forces shaping our economy. And when that power hides in the shadows, the impact hits harder. For every company they turn around, there's another they run into the ground. For every job they create, there's one lost in a restructuring. The system rewards speed and profit, not stability or service. So what do? You stay informed, you ask questions, and you start looking at who's behind the name on the building. If this opened your eyes or made you rethink what's really happening behind the scenes, hit that like button and subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Because if you want to protect your wallet, your community, and your future, this stuff matters more than ever.